All right, everybody, welcome. It's the Democracy Stupid. I'm Edwin Eisendrath, and I'm here with Ezra Levin, who is, of course, the co-founder and co-executive director of Indivisible, a movement that has spread like nothing we've ever seen across America, and it's probably the biggest pro-democracy movement in American history now. So, Ezra, congratulations. And I want to. You and I aren't going to talk again before our birthday.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about what you have planned as counter programming to the cage match. But before then, the idea of Indivisible seems to me to spring from an idea about America. And as we approach our birthday, and in fairness, it's not the birthday of the Constitution. It's not the birthday of our government. It's the birthday of that still stunning declaration that everybody's equal and we have rights that you can't take away. And that seems like that's the spirit that has that's in Indivisible. I wonder if you just talk about this movement and its connection to who we are as a country.
Look, this is a grand experiment in self-governance. That's what America is. We boldly said that we don't need to put up with the millennia of following monarchical rule. Instead, we can try this other thing. We can actually rule ourselves, and then we can set up a system of government that distributes all legitimate political power across our big, diverse country. We named Indivisible for a reason. We named it, it was specifically picked because it called back to that sense of patriotism, that we are one nation, indivisible. And the strategic logic behind Indivisible is that because we are a constitutional republic, the way political power is distributed is not in the hands of one guy or one institution or one specific capital city. It's distributed everywhere. And the way, therefore, to engage in the political process isn't by joining some single big national email list or national organization. It's to organize locally, because that's where your power actually resides. Individuals in our democracy, we don't have power as individuals. That's not how it works. Unless you're super rich or super wealthy, you can't really push institutions or political figures around. But on the plus side, because we parcel out power the way that we do, bands of people coming together, organizing in their own communities, can push their city council person, their state rep, their state senator, their U.S. rep, their U.S. senator, their governor. That is the theory behind how Indivisible is formed and how we operate, which is not as, I'm not the leader of Indivisible. The leaders of Indivisible are the thousands of leaders spread across just about every congressional district in the country who are building up communities of mutual aid, communities for advocacy, communities for electoral work. And I think the reason why we're here almost 10 years after the founding of Indivisible is because I don't own and operate this. There's nobody in DC who's calling the shots on everything that's going on. It's got to be locally led. And that's true for our advocacy campaigns. It's true for our electoral campaigns. And I think it's true for how we can actually reinstate democracy and rule of law in this country. If we're just waiting for somebody somewhere to write in and save the day, I think we lose. I truly believe that the only solution to rising authoritarianism is massive engagement in the democratic process. And I know of no better way to organize that massive engagement than at the local grassroots level.
Yeah, we saw that in Hungary.
That's right.
Organized people beats organized money.
Right.
So this is, like I said, this is deeply ingrained in that founding promise. And in the 250 years since then, I wonder, what's your view about how we've used those ideas and those tools to actually, make progress towards that promise?
Look, I don't think you need to whitewash American history to be proud of the ideals and the Declaration of Independence. We all know that the country was not founded as some egalitarian democracy that provided rights to everybody. Women were excluded to vote. Black and brown people were excluded from the right to vote. People without money or property were excluded from the right to vote. The Declaration of Independence set forth some ideals. And then the last 250 years has been a struggle between the forces that want to meet those ideals and the forces that want to roll us backwards.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned this earlier. It's the 250th anniversary of the country. It's not just not the 250th anniversary of the Constitution. I would say it's not anywhere close to the 250th anniversary of real representative pluralistic democracy in this
I
country.
mean, like 1968, the first
That's
time.
well, I would say it's 61 years since the 1965 Voting Rights Act. I would say in that moment, that is when we actually were able to achieve something that looked like pluralistic representative democracy. You could quibble with me. You could say, what about Reconstruction after the Civil War? And I would say that is a good example. You could see Black and brown people actually seeing the right to vote, actually getting elected in the former Confederate states.
Sure.
And then when Reconstruction ended, but not women, we got Jim Crow, and the 90-year struggle against Jim Crow as we built up a voting rights and civil rights act movement across the country. That only came to fruition with the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65. And that was the answer to Jim Crow. And it's not, I think people can think that we're going to save democracy or lose democracy in a fight. But the last 250 years of American history tells us democracy is a process, and we're making advances, and we're having to beat some tough retreats. And what we saw over the course of the last 17 months is that we've got a fascist in the White House who is not single-handedly dismantling democracy, but is riding a wave of anti-democratic ideology that started long before he became the leader of the MAGA movement. John Roberts started his career as a mid-level lawyer in the Reagan administration trying to dismantle the Voting Rights Act decades ago.
Yep.
What we saw this year with the final nail in the coffin of that bill was not something that Trump brought into fruition. It's part of the process of American democracy, this fight over what does it mean to be a democratic republic? Do we want everybody participating in the process, or do we want concentrated economic and political power to reign in our time? And I think we've suffered some defeats over the last 17 months, no doubt about it. But at the same time as we suffered those defeats, we've seen historic numbers of people flood in to the democratic process. And it's frankly, it's the thing that's giving me hope, not just for surviving this moment. I think we're going to take Trump down electorally in the midterms. I don't think he's going to be able to run and win in 28. But it's not about him right now. It's about what we do, what we build. What we build coming out of this, and do we treat this moment as a post-Civil War, a post-World War II moment for redesigning the social contract and the political contract we have in this country? I think we should, and that's where we should have our eyes set, not just on how do we limit damage from this guy. That's the immediate challenge, but that's not the goal. The goal is to represent democracy, and it's been taken away from us, and we need to reassert it. And the best way to do that is through nonviolent, mass organized political participation.
I feel like Indivisible might have begun as a kind of defensive movement, protest movement, but when Americans get together and organize together and talk about the country we love, it's in our DNA to look forward, not backwards. Yeah. So we went, and you don't defend going forward, you go on offense going forward.
That's right.
And I think this last year, Americans finally learned the tools that you laid out 10 years ago. They finally sort of massively understood organizing, litigating, delaying the worst, pushing for victories, working together in coalitions where people really have different interests but share a passion for the democracy. And I think this is the year we go on offense, and you guys have some individual groups have supported candidates in primaries, sometimes much to the embarrassment of the DCCC. All of that's about moving the country forward, not just defending against the attacks that we see coming.
Yeah, I wouldn't give us as much credit that we've discovered or just learned now. I think we fall in the long line of patriotic Americans who have been fighting to make our democracy an actual representative democracy. The suffragists, the civil rights protesters, the folks at it's Pride Month. We should be celebrating Stonewall. What was Stonewall? It wasn't a pride parade. It was good trouble. That's what Stonewall was. Yep. And I think that the history of advancing democracy in the country has always depended on a lot of people spread around the country saying, "Oh shit, I guess I've got to do something." And they organize and they do it. They demand it. And then we achieve that for a time, and the forces that want to tear us apart in order to concentrate power and wealth in their own hands, they pick at it. They pick at it. They pick at it. And at some point, another generation of people have to come together and say, no, 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 no. We're organizing and we're going to demand this. That's how democracy has always evolved. And the tools available to us when we're talking about nonviolent, organized advocacy and electoral work, they haven't changed that much. Around the edge, yes, we have TikTok now, and we have Slack now, and we have
new tools. We're using them. Right.
Yeah, you're right. We're using this right now. And these are fun, useful tools, but they're not the core of what building a democracy is. The core of it goes back 300,000 years of Homo sapiens hiding in woods together and engaged together to protect each other from woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. That is core to who we are as human beings. We are social animals who gather together in our geography for protection and governance. And we can't get distracted. Let's use these digital tools by all means as best we can. But the core of what makes our society works are human beings talking to each other. Yeah. And I think once people get offline and actually meet their neighbors face to face, even neighbors they disagree with, what they find pretty quickly is all the vitriol and all the poison that's out there on your social media feeds. It's not like it's not reflecting some level of disagreement that exists in the real world, but it's amped up to 11. And when human beings come in contact with other human beings, there is a visceral need for connection and understanding. And if you encourage that person-to-person interaction, I think it solves a lot of the problems in front of us.
I do too. And I mean, I think for a long time, I don't mean the tools are new that you've rediscovered. I don't mean the behaviors are new, but they went into hiatus for a while. We outsourced. We thought things were good. We thought the lawyers would protect everything we'd gained. And we needed to rediscover these old muscles. And sure enough, we have rediscovered, much to the embarrassment of the man in the White House. So to talk a little bit about his vision of the party he's throwing, what it's for, what it says about our country, and then what we have planned so that those of us can turn our backs on that and do something more fun.
Look, Donald Trump is going to do what Donald Trump always does, which is he wants attention on him. He always wants attention on him. And he's really, really good at getting attention on him. He is a generational talent in getting eyeballs turned in his direction. And that feeds his power. It really does. He's not doing it just for the sake of it. He wants control. And he knows if people are talking about it, even if they don't like what he's doing, if they're talking about him and giving their attention, he's gaining power. Which is why last year on June 14th on Flag Day, he threw that ridiculous military birthday parade, which is the day of the first No Kings protest.
Which was a bust.
It was it was such an embarrassment. I think he was falling asleep at his own birthday party. It was hilariously bad. And this year for his 80th birthday, he is defacing the White House lawn in order to throw a UFC match where he is selling tickets for over $10 million to the highest bidder, and where Republican members of Congress are falling over themselves trying to get special tickets for themselves and their spouses. So it is.
Let me ask you a question about that.
Yeah.
Is he having J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio in the thing fight each other for who's gonna get his thumbs up and who's gonna get his thumbs down? Because I might actually pay to go to see that.
See, unfortunately, Edwin, he's good at throwing a show. Don't get into it. Turn away. Don't give him what he wants. I think that's coming in 27, 28. But I mean, Trump just cares about himself. I don't think he cares about Vance or cares about Rubio or cares about the Republican Party. He cares about
peace in the Middle East or prices that we all are.
He said he loves it.
He doesn't care about any of it.
He doesn't care about that stuff. He just cares about himself, his own power, the attention he gets. He's trying to fill some hole in his soul that he will never fill regardless of how much money and power, but he'll keep trying at the expense of everybody around him. We don't have to focus on this guy anymore, Edwin. We do not. We do not have to give him what he wants. He is an unpopular, lame duck president whose own coalition is cracking as we build up our forces around the country. And I would just advise everybody, ignore what he's doing and start building community. So Indivisible and the Committee on the First Amendment, Jane Fonda's group, and No Kings, and many other groups, there's a cool concert that they're putting on that we're going to be doing watch parties. It's got folks like Rufus Wainwright and Patti Smith and Jane Fonda and many other cool artists. That's going to be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. You're going to see Indivisible groups. This is not No Kings 4. I want to be clear. This isn't a big mass protest day. There will be time for more big No Kings organizing. That's not what this is. This is counterprogramming. if you are looking for something else to do other than giving Donald Trump attention on his 80th birthday, you can give your attention to this. You can build some community. You can celebrate what it actually means to be an American and start building the forces up that you need in order to both win and protect the election results come the midterms. That's what's on the table now. There will be more organizing in the months to come, but I would just advise everybody, don't give Trump what he wants for his birthday, and don't be alone on that day. Build community and start building those human connections that we're going to need as we go forward.
Yeah, I mean, I what you're talking about is achievable in part because Americans are done with Trump. I mean, they just want him off the stage.
Yeah.
I know he grabs attention, but we are tired of him. And it's not just, I mean, his historic unpopularity isn't because suddenly there are a whole lot more Democrats who like him less. That's not what happened. There are actually people in America who are persuadable. Who knew? Who have changed their mind about this guy. And we are like welcoming him with open arms.
Yeah.
Like, come on in. We have a country to save.
I think it's very, very important that we welcome them with open arms, because Donald Trump won not because people embraced Project 2025, not because they wanted a fascist president. He won because people were pissed off at the status quo. People wanted lower prices of bread and eggs. People wanted to get health care. People wanted to get a job. People wanted to feel economically secure. People didn't want more wars or uncertainty. And given a choice between the status quo, which people were not satisfied with, and some guy who was saying he was going to blow it all up, even though he was corrupt, maybe he was going to be corrupt for us, they chose that guy, and he won by the skin of his teeth, but he won with that promise, and he's delivered none of that.
He broke every one of those promises. I think he also won because we were mad at each other, and he does that. He divides us and helps people get mad at each other, picks helpless people and tells us we should blame them. But I think Americans are finished with that mostly, not entirely. But we look at what Pete Hegseth is doing to the military. We look at the destruction of the Voting Rights Act. And I think there was just visceral disgust by some of that across large chunks of America.
Look, authoritarians everywhere succeed with a divide and conquer tactic. That is what they do. They try to make sure that we're fighting each other so we don't unify and fight the guys who are trying to concentrate wealth and power in their own hands. And it works pretty darn well. It does work pretty darn well. That is why if you look around the world at the authoritarians who are holding power, there's always some enemy within who they are pointing to. You should be worried about brown people. You should be worried about black people. You should be worried about immigrants. You should be worried about refugees. They're the reason you don't have a job. They're the reason why your healthcare is expensive. They're the reason why eggs and bread are so expensive. They tell a morality tale about who are the villains, who are the heroes, and you want to be with the heroes. And that's a powerful story, Edwin. I do think people can only live with that level of hate inside themselves for so long before they look for something else. And I do think people are hungry for a different vision, but we've got to tell a different morality tale. It can't just be that, well, we can all agree that it should be easier to get ahead in this country. There are villains in American democracy right now, and we should be willing to call them out. There are tech fascist billionaires who are systematically alienating us from each other and driving down the economy, driving up the prices of our water and our electricity so that they can feed us AI slop and kill our jobs. We should name these villains and say they are part of the problem with our democracy. And we should be able to tell that tale full-throated to build a coalition that can actually deliver for people. That is a challenge, though, I would say, for the future. Right now, we got to defeat the fascists. Right now, the question in 2026 is, do we align across ideological lines from the left to the center to the right to the politically disaffected from Trump who voted for him? Are we building a coalition that says, look, we might not agree on everything, but we don't want a secret police force that's terrorizing our communities and trying to subvert the election results. That's something where we can all agree. That is not a thing that we want. We don't want a billionaire who is defacing the White House lawn and taking billions of dollars in crypto bribes. That doesn't work for us. That doesn't improve our lives. Let's say no to that, and then let's have a rich debate about what we're saying yes to.
Well, and because we do this through an electoral process, we really do both at the same time, and we're seeing it in the set of primaries with the season that we are almost through. We are seeing more and more transformation of both parties from what they were. The Republican Party becoming entirely Donald Trump's, whatever that is. It's not really an American political party, but Donald Trump's cheerleaders. and anybody who disagrees gets thrown out. And this very big tent of the Democratic Party that has people in it who are quite different, but they are all passionate about the communities they serve. They are passionate about this small democracy that works in their particular congressional district, which, like Mamdani is great for Manhattan, but there are other people who are great for their congressional districts, and they share some values, but they don't share the same strategies. And it's really interesting what the Democrats are building. But I think they're building towards, or they're not, at least as I see this primary, Ezra, I don't see people afraid to point at the villains who are trying to take it away.
I think that's right in some cases, Edwin. I might push back a bit. I think there's a healthy conflict within the Democratic Party right now about what the party should become. And when I look around the country to the primaries that indivisible groups are engaging in, the main debate is not really about left versus right or left versus center. It's not quite an ideological fight. Indivisibles are progressive, so they tend to support more progressive candidates, but they're also quite practical. They want people who will win the district, who they know can actually get through not just a primary but a general election. The axis that I see people evaluating candidates on more than ideology is orientation towards this current moment. Do you think this is a crisis moment, or are you treating this more or less as politics as usual? And the signs that you're treating this as politics as usual is that you're taking money from the same corporate donors as the Republicans. You are not committing to a significant oversight agenda when you get gavels next year. You are okay with Chuck Schumer's leadership and are willing to vote for him again for Senate Majority Leader, even though he's the least popular political figure in the country. That's not quite an ideological position. That's an orientation towards the current moment. And so when you look at Jasmine Clark in Georgia 13, who took on, at the time, David Scott, he's since passed away, a 5-decade Politico. He was a guy who took money from bad corporations. He wasn't even voting in elections. He voted to thank ICE for his service. And this is a district that Kamala Harris won by 42 points. Like, why are we electing candidates like that in a district that Kamala Harris won in 42 by 42 points? And I think this is a healthy fight within the Democratic Party.
I do too.
We can have a debate about what kind of candidate should represent a Republican-leaning district. Like that's like a good debate. Like, who can actually win a general election? But there are 130 plus Democratic districts that are Democrat plus 10, safe Democratic districts. We do not have 130 fighters in the U.S. House of Representatives on the Democratic side, and we should, Edwin. And I would when I look around those primaries, I see a lot of good signs. Like Jasmine Clark, Anna Lilia in New York, Randy Villegas, who just won in California, 22nd, Graham Plattner, Brad Lander, Daria Lisa, also in New York, Julie Gonzalez in Colorado, incredible candidate taking on John Hickenlooper, Peggy Flanagan in Minnesota. These are candidates who I think they're going to win their primaries, and I think they're going to reinvigorate the Democratic brand, because unfortunately, the Democratic Party is deeply unpopular now. And I don't want an unpopular party going up against the fascists. I want a strong, fighting, winning party that can convince voters to believe in them. So I'm excited for this primary season, because I think it's going to expand the general.
And I guess, I agree with you. It's not a left-right vector anymore. And the way I've been talking about it, it's a let's get it done versus the let's make a deal vector.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
The old school was let's make a deal. That's what the Senate used to be about, when you had two political parties that were both legitimate, after all, reflecting legitimate concerns of Americans. That's what you have to engage in democracy. But one of our parties has gone rogue, and they're not a legitimate party for American people anymore. They're Donald Trump's personal assistants. And so let's make a deal is not the game you play. The game you play is let's get shit done. And that means you guys got to go.
Yep. I'm with you. I think it's healthy. I'm excited for it. I think that, we've been in this uncomfortable place where the rank and file electorate, rank and file Democrats have just been very distant from Democratic leadership in Congress, really, for the last 17 months, because the orientation of most Democrats was fight these bastards, fight them tooth and nail, use every tool at your disposal to fight them in Congress, fight them at the state level, fight them at the city level, do what you can. And we've had some great leaders who have done that, like the Maxwell Frost or the Chris Murphys or the Chris Van Hollens or AOC or Bernie or others. Like, it's not to say the Democratic Party is bereft of incredible fighters, but they haven't been the dominant faction of the party. They haven't been driving major strategic decisions. And ultimately, as individual voters, we've got a choice. We can just accept the party we've got, or we can demand something better. The way that you demand something better is by giving your attention, your time, your volunteer energy, and your money to candidates who are actually going to revive that party. And I think we're seeing it this year. And I really do. I think we are.
I don't actually think that Chuck Schumer is the Democratic. I don't think the DNC is the Democratic Party. I think we have a confusion about what parties are and what they mean. I mean, the DNC organizes debates, raises some money. You know, it's like 20 people and it's got a board, but it's not really the Democratic Party. The people that I saw at No Kings.
That's right.
And they're the people that I talk to on the street. They're the people that ran out of their house when ICE was showing up on our streets. And you know, how we organize that sometimes not so well. And then money gets involved and you end up with people like you do on college boards of trustees because they can afford to give big gifts, but they don't really, you know, have the interest of the university at heart in the same way. We see that in organizational problems across America, but the heart of this party is this massive number of people that are in Indivisible or not even Indivisible, but are out there every day trying to pick candidates who will represent them. It's a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing, but energy unorganized evaporates. I agree with you that the Democratic Party is not Chuck Schumer. It's not Ken Martin. Like, they are players within the Democratic Party. Right. In the grand scheme of things, relatively minor players and players who could be replaced by other players who better represent where the party rank and file actually are. But the key thing here is, and this was the shift for Indivisible between the beginning of last year and the end of last year. At the beginning of last year, our orientation was, okay, this is our Democratic leadership. Let's work with them in order to encourage good strategic plays against the Trump regime. And after a year of banging our head against the wall on that, we came to the conclusion of, well, look, these guys are not going to get it. We've got to replace them. We've got to get into primaries and demand a better party. And that means organization, because it's one thing to point a finger and say, Chuck Schumer, you should have done this, or Ken Martin, I don't like that you did that. Like, we can do that, but they're not the problem. Our lack of organization is the problem. The party reflects our efforts or our lack of effort. And so for anybody out there who is pissed off that the party isn't adopting that more fighter orientation, the more get shit done orientation, look, I agree with you. Who are you supporting this primary season? Name the 2 or 3 candidates who you've adopted, who you're going to get in, who represent that orientation you want to see. Because if you're not doing that, you're just complaining about it. And the Democratic Party will become what we demand of it, but demanding it requires actual organization. Unless you're a billionaire. If you're a billionaire, you can write some check and build whatever party you want. But we're not that. And I don't believe we get the party we want just through big money coming in and fixing things. I think we got to organize.
I agree. And I see that organization. I mean, look, I live in Illinois. Illinois had a primary for the United States Senate, right? We had 3 candidates, all of them credibly progressive sort of candidates.
I don't know about that, but the other 2, absolutely.
Progressively sort of candidates.
Yeah.
I mean, broadly, they were Democrats, but in the Big Ten. One of them just was like focused on the money.
Yeah.
Just focused on the money, and it raised boatloads of money, and it didn't help. You know, I mean, he lost. So he
was riding high for a while. Everybody's very scared, and Stratton eked it out. And I'm so thankful to J.B. Pritzker and to the folks who rallied behind Stratton. And she's going to be an incredible senator. She is going to be an incredible senator. And what an upgrade from Durbin, who was the quintessential let's make a deal Democrat, is being replaced by a real fighter. And I'm excited.
Yeah. And I want to defend Dick a little bit. In the era that he spent most of his career, he was a fabulous senator. But that era is gone.
Agreed.
That era is gone.
And this is one of the reasons why you need generational change in the Democratic Party, because I think you're exactly right. The Dick Durbin that I knew from 2 decades ago.
Yeah, the guy who kept smoking off airplanes. I mean,
that's right. He was a fighter in the way it meant to be a fighter back then. But politics has changed, and there are a lot of longtime, multi-decade Democratic members of Congress who were incredible leaders circa the mid-1990s. But now politics is different. It's not there, and we need new energy and we need new faces. It's as simple as that. We don't have to say all of their career was wasted or they're corrupt figures who need to just get out to build a party that actually represents the current times. And I just to emphasize again, for folks who are listening who are like, yeah, I want that, but there's not a primary candidate in my state or in my area. That's okay. Go and find a couple around the country. We've got primaries this month in New York. Brad Lander and Daria Lisa are running New York's 10, New York 13. Julie Gonzalez in Colorado is running. Later this summer, Peggy Flanagan is up against a Chuck Schumer-aligned candidate, Angie Craig in Minnesota. Peggy Flanagan's incredible, and she's been on the front lines of fighting against ICE in Minnesota. Her primary is up in August. Justin Pearson in Tennessee is up against a corporate Democrat in Tennessee.
Definitely needs help.
They need help. So my point here being, you don't have to support all these candidates. In fact, I would recommend you don't try to put this all on your shoulders, but pick one or two. You say, you know, that's my guy or gal. That's the person I want in Congress who represents the Democratic Party. Adopt them, volunteer for them, give them money, raise attention for them, because that's how grassroots candidates win. Randy Villegas just eked out a win in California 22nd, not because of big money, but because grassroots support was sufficient to overcome the National Democratic Party that tried to squash him.
Yeah. I mean, 2 points about that. One, like the Whigs weren't all terrible, but they didn't rise to the moment, and we needed a new party, and Abe Lincoln helped us get one.
Yeah.
Right. This is where we are. And the Democratic Party is in this transition, an older crowd that's not rising to the moment, and donors, some of them are not rising to the moment. And what's happening from the bottom that is definitely identified the moment and finding ways to get it. And the other point, though, Ezra is 100% right. Find a candidate somewhere that you can help, but also join your local Indivisible group, because the work you do, even when there isn't an election in your community, to build that sense that we are together and strong, and that we look out for each other, and that we have a way to articulate a vision forward, matters for the whole country, because people look around, they see it, they're inspired. It builds strong communities.
And I'm from Texas, so I want to underline this point. It does not matter if you are in a purple state or in a blue state. We need this kind of organization everywhere. There was a time when Texas was impossible. There was a time when Alabama was impossible. There was a time when Georgia was impossible. All of these places have had surprise political opportunities at the local or the state level.
I think Mississippi has some now.
And Mississippi does right now too as well. But you can't win. You can't take advantage of those opportunities if you've developed absolutely no infrastructure. So Edwin, to your point, I think one of the bad things that we as a Democratic Party have done is treated elections as an every 2 years or every 4 years thing. And you show up in communities that have never heard from you before and say, hey, you got to come out and vote. And I just don't think that works. People reasonably view your outreach as cynical. If you want to win in these places that are currently red, if you want to take a red and turn it into purple, and take a purple and turn it into light blue, or take a light blue and turn it into deep blue, you got to build year-round organization, which is not primarily about electing some candidate. It's actually about building community where people see you out there doing good works in the community. So when you come next October and say, hey, you should come out and vote, they're like, oh, I know that guy. I know that gal. We've been talking a while. They do mutual aid. They help in XYZ ways. So a special shout out to folks in rural and red areas who feel alone. I'll tell you, if you start an Indivisible group or join an Indivisible group, you're going to find a community of people. It doesn't matter how red or rural your community is. They're going to be people who agree with you and who are hungry for that community and want to join.
I can't think of a better ending point, Ezra, than that one. So just to tell people one more time, if they're curious and don't know about Indivisible, which I can't believe, but there might be a few out there, what do they do?
Look, go to indivisible.org. This is led by you. The Indivisible movement is made of about 3,000 locally led Indivisible groups in just about every congressional district in the country, made up by people who looked around and said, I guess I got to organize because I don't like what's happening and I need to bring my community together. Sometimes it's started by a couple of friends, start their local Indivisible group, and it grows into hundreds or thousands of people who meet on a regular basis and identify ways to get involved that have impact in their community. We're not doing things for the sake of doing things. We're not trying to raise money to line anybody's coffers. We're trying to build power, by which I mean we're trying to change what people in institutions and what elected officials do. And the way that we do that is by organizing locally, identifying where we have leverage, and pushing. You can be part of that. Anybody can be part of that. Go to indivisible.org, find a local group. If there's not one near you, start one with a friend and get moving.
Thank you, Ezra.